He's arguably the world's best-known percussionist, a maestro of the tabla, a flag bearer of the contemporary world music movement. We have with us Zakir Hussain, and it is an absolute pleasure and honor to speak with him.
It's my honor and pleasure, Ankita. Thanks for making time for me.
I want to begin by asking you, after all these awards, 2 Grammys, a Padma Bhushan, America's highest award for the performing arts, and I'm not even going into the list of others. What makes you tick? What makes you sort of get up and get inspiration every day?
I guess the quest is always to get better, reinvent yourself. I haven't, as a quote said by a great maestro at one time, played good enough to quit. I mean, if you think you've done the best you can ever do, you might as well hang up your boots and retire. And that moment never arrives when it comes to creative arts. You always have to find a new language to express the old story. And that's exactly what it is. So that thirst keeps me going, and these awards and stuff that we all hype about so much, they are basically just a pat on the back. It doesn't mean that you've arrived and you're at the pinnacle. It just means that one step has now been taken, the next should be taken, and you're being told that we recognize that you're on the right track, and as long as that's in your head, and the excitement of running into beautiful young creative artists of all genres of art and music from all over the world, and being able to see and learn from them is what keeps any artist going, and I'm no exception.
Right. It's great that you bring up your collaborative work, because that really is such an important part of your body of work, and you've collaborated with so many great musicians. Is there one that stands out for you, from Ravi Shankar to Mickey Hart of the Grateful Dead, which is such a legendary collaboration?
Well, that would be like you're putting all your eggs in one basket. It's not really true. It's even when you talk about someone as great and a godlike character like Pandit Ravi Shankar ji, there is Ustad Vilayat Khan Sahab, one of the greatest sitarists that India has ever seen. And when you play with one and then the other, you realize that it's a whole different world, a whole different way of expressing how the instrument should be played and used as a voice for Indian classical music. And so you learn from either or. So it's a different conversation every time. So and that's just Indian music. And then you're playing jazz or rock or pop or hip hop or rap or anything you want to do. They all have a different approach to what their creative process is. And so I can't tell you that one is better than the other. Right. I can't tell you that one is something that I look to or for. All I can say is that I've been lucky enough to be working with and under the guidance of some of the greatest practitioners of their art form, and it's been an honor to be able to learn from them all. And so the learning continues and carries on, and I hope that I have to tell you about the young musicians today. When you play with the younger musicians today, you see Indian traditional art form from their point of view, and these young musicians, they've grown up parallel. Not only just learning Indian classical music, but all other forms of music at the same time, and they've been able to compare apples and oranges or whatever. And so they have a much more panoramic understanding of what music is all about, which I didn't have when I first started, because it was just stuck with Indian music. And so when you play with young artists of today, you see that point of view, and it's like and you learn some more, and that's another exciting
and other
thing.
Names that you would single out?
Oh, there are quite a few. I mean, there's from Kolkata itself, there is Purvayan Chatterjee, there is Kushal Bose, there's Niladri Kumar, there's Rakesh Chaurasia, the Sarangi cousins Sabir and Dilshad, and the South Indian brothers Kumaresh and Ganesh and Rajesh, and so many other beautiful musicians, Kala. I mean, the list is endless. They are all musicians at their age, and that's just instrumentalists, and there's a whole bunch of tabla players. And when you earlier said, you know, I'm the flag bearer and all that stuff, it's not really true. I've said in some interview just recently, and I always say that I'm not the best tabla player around. I just happen to be the one whose name is on the marquee. It's true, there's about 10 or 15 tabla players who are just as good as I am, and on their day better.
Wow.
You know, it's true.
I think you're being modest, and
No,
they'd
I'm
be
not
very
being
flattered.
modest. It's actually true. I know, because when I play and I see them do what they do, I kind of go like, ooh. I mean, really, it's like they do things. I mean, I arrive at a certain point, but they have the advantage of where I am, where other masters were, and taking off from there, you know. And so that collective knowledge is there, and now they're going forward. Meantime, I've spent so much energy getting where I am that it's kind of hard to, you know, look forward, and they do. And so
it is a continuous learning process.
It's a continuous
in that
learning
sense.
process, and so I have to say that I'm delighted that the bench strength of music all over the world, not just India, whether it's Indonesia or China or Japan or America or anywhere, is so deep. And you see all the young musicians confidently taking this up, and without any hesitancy and any kind of a fear of being threatened, expressing themselves. And that is a renaissance that's global.
You know, I think that is so true of music. When you talk about creative freedoms in music, it's certainly something that we see everywhere else in the world and in India as well. But there is creative freedom, by and large, is being hotly debated in India right now.
Okay. Not just India.
Not just India, of course, but I think specifically for us, the film Padmavati, which has now been renamed Padmavat, has been a huge issue, which has been constantly on the headline in the headlines. And even after the Supreme Court said all states must screen it, there's been violence in specific states, and there is this sort of belief that there is a latent, you know, the protesters are getting tacit support from the states who are looking the other way. And how does one go about returning creative freedom to performers, to artists, to filmmakers in a situation where it seems to be under so much threat?
I don't know if creative freedom was ever the under the baton of the powers that be. An artist sitting in some little shanty hut in Tangla or somewhere, when he's learning and playing and perfecting his art form as best as he or she could, there's nobody saying, here's some money, or here's a house to live in, or here's the stipend from the government, none of that. So the creative process lives within the artist, and therefore within the core of the art itself, the world of art itself. It has very little to do with what else is going on outside of the peripheral view of these art forms. And I have to say that if the artists focus and the creative geniuses just concentrate on their work, there's no way that that's going to in any way vanquished. It's not going to be extinguished. It has never been. Aurangzeb supposedly broke instruments and buried them and burned whatever, but we're still here. And Hitler did the same with all sorts of beautiful books and paintings and whatnot and everything, but we're still here. And we will always be here. I don't see that the creative world is going to be in any way disheartened because somebody says something and will say it for a while until 6 months down the road it's forgotten. But the art will always live, and an artist will always live. And if there is a balanced, how should I say, a balanced telling of this story by the media, which concentrates not just on the negative element of it, but the positive work that the artists are doing, the media will help nurture it and preserve it. And that's in the end what should happen.
I think that's a very important message that you're sending out there. But I also, you've talked about how multiple religions have influenced your
Yes,
life.
absolutely.
And
They still do.
And you've talked about how, when you were doing your talim, it was a tribute to Hindu gods and goddesses. You had your Quranic education as a child. You've studied in a convent school. Do you believe that kind of syncretism is possible in India today in 2018, what you grew up with?
When I was growing up, those were different times. But I think it is most certainly possible to be able to have all this be normal. I really believe that our way of life, and especially an Indian way of life, is very unique. Something that's very much on a more refined and aware shelf than anywhere else in the world. I have to say this. There's nowhere in the world where there's so many diverse cultures, so many thought processes, and so many ways of life, and they have all coexisted over the centuries and have found a copacetic way of existence. So I can't imagine that if we chose to, cannot revert back to the way we used to live.
But it would be a process, because we do seem to have moved quite far away from there. You have a minister talking about comparing Dalits to dogs. You have an education minister talking about refuting Darwinism.
Well, actually, I'm sorry. It's not the ministers talking about it. They talk about it, but it's the media that amplifies it. So that's what I'm saying. There has to be a balance, telling of the stories.
When you talk about balance, how do you find balance in your own life and in your music?
I've never actually thought about balance being something that I had to go out and look for. It's just a normal part of existence. If I'm going to live my life the way it suits me, if I'm going to breathe in the rhythm that it helps my body, and speak at a tempo that clearly expresses that which I want to say, that's it, it's balance. One of the things is to be able to not hesitate to express yourself, in the immortal words of Madonna.
Madonna, indeed. Now we're coming full circle to perhaps your
Let's lighten up the thing a little bit, right?
So tell us, actually, do you have a story that you'd like to share from the time that you collaborated with Mickey Hart or the Grateful Dead? Because there've got to be sort of stories that you haven't really talked about before.
Well, I mean, I always wondered if my father actually knew what he was doing when he told Mickey Hart, "Take my son with you." Did he even realize what Grateful Dead culture was? Those are the guys who invented acid. They invented peyote buttons. They invented mushrooms. They invented all sorts of, stuff. And I was being sent by my father from Los Angeles to go hang out with Mickey Hart in his ranch, where all the Grateful Dead guys were hanging out. You won't believe this, but the studio, there were these little stations in the studio. There's the board, tables and all. And there were a couple of people whose job was to make sure that rolled cigarettes were available. And they were put in different bowls in different places. If you were in the bedroom and you opened the drawer, they were lined up. It was one of those kind of things. And I'm really surprised that I somehow did not.
Were you ever offered any?
You kidding? It was just sitting there for you to take. It wasn't. But as a 7-8-year-old child, at that time, I don't know if you know this, but there was prohibition in Maharashtra. So Bombay was a dry state like Gujarat is today. But there were these aunties, little speakeasies, you know, places you went to.
Right.
Yeah, all the musicians after the recordings and the films and all and everything, music directors. That's where there was a place called Danda, and there was one in the little by lanes in Bandra and Mahim. So I remember going there with my dad. And, you know, because they had to let off some steam, you know. So we'd go, and I'd be sitting there in this auntie ka adda, and they'll be drinking something with kaju or santara or whatnot or anything. And I was given a Coca-Cola. In those days, we used to get Coca-Cola. After that, it was banned. And I would sit there till 1, 2, 3 in the morning, and I would watch them drink. And then all sorts of music would come out, all sorts of compositions would be discussed, and songs would be discussed, and ragas. I tell you, a lot of information came that has really helped me to grow as a musician. But even sitting in that kind of a gathering and with all that going on, I don't know why it never occurred to me that I should taste that. I was quite happy with my Coca-Cola and fish fry. Very happy with that, but never did it occur to me.
Music and Madeira, you're saying, are complementary.
So I guess it did not appear to me when I went to the Grateful Dead that I would actually partake other than music. And the excitement of having Carlos Santana there, Jerry Garcia there, John Cipollino there, David Crosby, Gracie Slick, Stephen Stills, all these great musicians all at the same time hanging about, and of course playing music. I remember once we played music 4.5 days at a stretch, non-stop.
And did that not enter the Guinness Book of World Records?
No, there was no such thing. I mean, the thing was, somebody thought of it and said, we should play music as long as we can. And at any given time, there should be 3 people continuously playing at least. So it shouldn't stop.
Right. So it was a sort of musical relay.
Yeah, and then of course everyone else had some replenishing substances available.
But you carried on without that.
No, but I found myself at times just lying on the floor asleep, and I'd get up, and there's standing above me Jerry Garcia playing his guitar, and David Crosby is sitting there playing his acoustic guitar and humming a tune, and I just kind of rub my eyes, get up, sit on the conga drum and start playing rhythm. And so that's how it went. For 4.5 days we just played music. Tapes are still there.
That's unbelievable.
In the vault.
Well, you know, there should be some way to bring those out and perhaps turn that into
it's how it is. You know, the way it's recorded, it's very rough. You know, it's just microphones lying around and so on. But it is documented. It's there. So those were different days. There were no issues of managers and business agents and copyrights and whatnot. All these musicians just hung out and played music. And that was a very innocent, exchange of ideas and happiness.
So, what made you think of memoirs at this point?
Memoirs? Kidding? Like I said, I haven't played good enough to quit yet. I really don't know if I've achieved anything of significance in my life yet. I feel that the best is yet to come. And I don't know if it will ever come, but the fact is that memoirs are, I just feel very fortunate that I have had plug-ins through 4 generations of musicians, all the way from Pandit Omkar Nath Thakur and Dagar brothers, senior Dagar brothers, Ustad Bade Ghulam Ali Khan Sahab, Amir Khan Sahab, down to Pandit Ravi Shankar ji, Ali Akbar Khan Sahab, Vilayat Khan Sahab, down to Nikhil Banerjee, Rais Khan Sahab, and so on, and then down to Shahid Parvez and Shiv Kumar ji, Hari Prasad ji, and all those guys. So Amjad Ali Khan Sahab and all. So I have seen all these, changes in Indian music, and the learning process has been one of the most wondrous and exciting thing in my life, and I hope that continues, and if that turns into some sort of a suggestion as a mentor to somebody and that appears somewhere, that's a different thing. I don't know. I mean...
So the best is indeed yet to come. Is there a next big project that Ustad Zakir Hussain is doing, would like to talk about?
Well, let's see. I'm taking the Symphony Orchestra of India to Germany, and the granddaughter of the great composer, German composer Wagner, is presenting us. And so that's a big thing. I've just finished the music score for Nandita Das's new film Manto, and it just so happens that they're going to be talking about it here today. So that's another thing. I was commissioned to write a string quartet for a quartet called Kronos Quartet, which is a famous string quartet, which I just finished, and that's premiering April 26th. So all that is going on, and I'm on tour with a group I put together called Cross Currents, which is a combination of Indian and Western classical and jazz musicians. From Western side, there's a great bass player named Dave Holland and a fabulous saxophone player named Chris Potter. And then from Indian side, there's Louis Banks, Shankar Mahadevan, and Gino Banks, his Louis' son, and a guitar player named Sanjay Divecha, very fine guitar player, and I happen to be...
Will we get to hear you over here in India?
Well, we're probably going to make a record, and that's going to be heard here. And so that's another next project that starts end of April, so after the premiere of the quartet. So life goes on, the search for the best continues, and the prayer within myself is, I hope the best is never found.
The best is never found. Those are words to live by.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ustad Zakir Hussain, thank you so
My
much
pleasure.
for talking to NDTV.
Thank you, Ankita.